And on the three other sections, you can see the basic needs assistants, the CalFresh outreach assistants, and the peer educators. But like I said, a lot of them graduated. So in that picture, the peer educators, I'm not in there because I came like afterwards, but it's okay. And here's a timeline of the basic needs efforts at UCSD. Strategizing for basic needs support began in 2014. Then in 2015, the Trident Food Pantry opened up. Oh my gosh, sorry, I'm like getting out of the frame. Then in 2015, the Trident Food Pantry opened up to provide students with discrete access to food. Following in 2017, Alicia was hired as the Basic Needs Director. And in 2018, the hub was established to expand accessibility to other resources. And lastly, in 2020, the off-campus housing office resources were expanded to amplify housing support, CalFresh access, and COVID-19 response. In order to put the topic of accessibility of basic needs into perspective, here are a few quotes taken directly from UCSD students. So one of them is, sometimes I will eat once a day to save money to pay for bills. My family needed some help, so I gave them money, but I am worried I can't make rent for the rest of the quarter. I sleep in my car during the week and stay on my friend's couch on the weekends. You may have noticed a common pattern in each of these student experiences, which is the intersection between basic needs. For example, the first student clearly is dealing with both financial struggles as well as food insecurity. And then the second and third student are dealing with both financial struggles and housing insecurity. Well, intersections don't occur among basic needs alone. Basic needs also overlap with health. This is because, as I mentioned at the beginning, one's access to basic needs greatly dictates the ability of an individual to thrive both physically and mentally. Not only that, race, class, gender, family structure, culture, citizenship status, and the environment can all impact health. These impacts can positively or negatively impact someone. If negative, stress can further perpetuate someone's bad health by lowering one's defenses. This can occur because of an overload of stress
And two of our animals that
that can decrease the efficiency of one's immune system, being able to protect the individual from outside invaders such as viruses, toxins, and more. And now, if we think back to those student perspectives, which I talked about earlier, how may identity affect these experiences? In the last quote, the student talked about sleeping in the car, but the potential consequences of the situation would look very differently depending on factors such as ethnicity or gender. Gender, family, and decision-making power play a critical role in the impact of culture on basic need security. Impacts of culture on food security include who accesses food first, the types of food considered appropriate to eat, preparation of the food, and preferences about ideal body sizes, which can affect eating behaviors. In the past, some well-intended food security programs have failed because of a lack of consideration of culture. This could include a disregard for dietary restrictions, deliveries of culturally uncommon food, and more. This could also include an overrepresentation of certain identities in higher education basic needs services. In general, we know that in the community and in higher education, students of marginalized identities have higher rates of basic needs security challenges. Culture can also play a factor in the stigma associated with accessing services. Why is there stigma surrounding basic needs? Well, there's a taboo of being seen utilizing these resources, such as CalFresh or like your EBT card. People don't believe the services are for them sometimes, or they might not even know that these services exist. Internal barriers to seeking help also exist. Who feels comfortable reaching out for help? And this may differ due to cultural differences. But how do we combat this stigma? It's important to involve everyone, increase availability, meet students where they are, allow discreet and confidential services, and consider culture, as I had mentioned. For example, how does that look like for different cultures and who is comfortable reaching out for help? Through the Hope Lab data collected in 2018, awareness was spread on the basic needs challenges university students face. As seen here, two-year institutions and four-year institutions differ in their experiences. At two-year institutions, 43% of students report to be food insecure, 46 report housing insecurity, and 12% report houselessness. Meanwhile, at four-year institutions, 35% report food insecurity, 37 report housing insecurity, and 9% report experiencing houselessness. You might notice that we use the word houselessness instead of homelessness, since they both carry different connotations. The term homeless might make you think of someone that doesn't have a home. In reality, a home can be anywhere where someone feels comfortable and can look differently for different people. With the term houselessness, it's clear that this individual doesn't have a house, but they might have a home. Even with these points in mind, you'll still encounter different studies that use the term homeless instead. Given that access to basic needs can greatly dictate one's health, it's not uncommon to see that sizable fractions of students who do poorly in college grades also deal with food and or housing insecurity. So why is data important? For one, data creates discussion and generates questions that focus attention onto the issue. Even if the data doesn't fully capture the total number of students that lack basic needs, it's still important to read into the statistics at different institutions because data allows society to reframe their understanding of what it means to be in college today. It's not your same college experience from years ago. So, what can we take away from this? Food security, housing security, and financial wellness is intrinsically connected in terms of how struggles in one sector create a ripple effect in the rest. There's many underlying factors that contribute to insecurities. The retention and administration of basic needs resources sometimes have weaknesses that stem from a lack of consideration of culture, and it's important to spread the word about these resources in order for more people to access them. Great, so now I'd like to switch gears a bit and talk about resources at the hub and off-campus housing information. That being said, not only is raising awareness of the necessity of basic needs crucial, but so is actually providing resources for students. So here's an overview of our resources that have been adjusted to the COVID-19 pandemic. For example, the basic needs, CalFresh, and housing consultations are all being, um, they're all happening solely through Zoom instead of in person. And other services which have changed are now offered include the personal hygiene product pickup, CalFresh webinars, Facebook cooking demos, the grocery store restocking Google Sheet, and more. Other resources that we usually offer, such as the mobile Trident Food Pantry, are currently suspended due to the COVID-19 protocols. Luckily, the Trident Food Pantry has recently partnered up with DoorDash to allow students living within a 10-mile radius of UCSD to get groceries delivered. One delivery counts as the student's one visit to the Trident Food Pantry for that week. In this way, students won't have to come to campus in order to access our services. And also the grocery shuttle, which y'all might have heard of already, picks up students from Pepper Canyon every Saturday and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. You can choose to take the shuttle that takes you to La Jolla Village Square or Convoy. And you could even choose to take the shuttle and not get groceries if you just want to like get boba or something from Convoy, or I don't know. But the purpose of the grocery shuttle is not just to provide transportation to grocery stores, but it's also to provide students with more culturally, ethnically reflective foods, such as through grocery stores like H Mart or 99 Ranch Market. Now, a resource that y'all might have heard of already is CalFresh. CalFresh is a nutrition program that can help households buy healthy and culturally reflective food. It is funded by the federal government, and those who qualify include immigrants, senior citizens, students, people with disabilities, and SSI recipients. Through the CalFresh benefits, recipients receive an EBT card, which can be used at select grocery stores, as well as some online platforms like Amazon Fresh and Walmart. This EBT card is used pretty much like a debit card, except all the money comes from the government thanks to SNAP, and um, it's really easy to use. Honestly, I recommend applying if you haven't. Let's get into the eligibility requirements. First, we must consider who is defined as a student because it can be kind of wordy. But basically, students must be between the ages of 18 and 49, enrolled at least half time, and be physically and mentally able to attend school. Then students must meet at least one of the requirements from this list. The most common one that we see is for the student to be a Cal Grant A or B recipient. Many times students might not know that they qualify for CalFresh until they actually look at their financial aid package. In order to apply, a student must have these four documents: a copy of their financial aid letter, proof of income, an ID, and proof of rent or their leasing agreement. The financial aid letter must state at least one of the following: Cal Grant A or B, UCSD grant, or a federal work study. As for the proof of income, that only applies if the student is working a non-work study job. Here is some more information regarding the proof of rent or leasing agreement. So this could either be a document of the lease or a rental agreement, it doesn't matter. But if you live on campus, contact housinginfo@ucsd.edu for your housing and dining contract. And if you live off campus and you are not on your own on and you are not on your lease, then you can submit an informal letter dated and signed with the amount paid for rent and the payee's contact information. So what happens after you apply? Well, you must check your physical mailbox for your interview appointment within the next 2 weeks, and they will call you from a block number, and the interview is roughly 15 to 20 or 30 minutes. And they just want to verify all the information that you listed on your application. And after about a week, you can expect an approval or a denial letter. But if you feel that you are wrongfully denied, then you can email the hub so we can schedule your over the phone hearing. And if you
So
have
I have
any
a
questions,
question.
yeah,
Uh,
go ahead.
Can students apply if they're living at home right now?
Um, I'm actually not sure. I feel like they can, but I don't know if it changed because of COVID-19. I know when I lived on with my parents, I was denied from CalFresh because
Mm,
you're getting like that help from your parents, you know?
okay.
Yeah. Oh, but I was gonna say, if you have any questions regarding CalFresh, then make sure to send an email to calfresh@ucsc.edu. And if you want to stay updated on CalFresh webinars, follow the Instagram at UCSD Basic Needs. Yeah. But I'm not sure on that question. You can also email CalFresh, but I feel like it might have not changed. And for the last portion of my presentation, I'll be discussing information that's important to know if you're considering off-campus housing. Thanks for everyone's patience and attentiveness to my presentation so far. I know that I've covered a lot. So the Off-Campus Housing Office, coordinated by Damian Ruiz, offers resources to aid students in the transition from on-campus living to off-campus living. Damian Ruiz provides housing consultations, help with lease overviews, and move in and out resources. One of the resources that the Hub has to offer through the Off-Campus Housing Office is emergency housing for currently registered undergraduate and graduate students. If students are in an emergency, we encourage them to complete a basic needs self-referral form or contact their Dean of Student Affairs. I emphasize that this applies to emergency situations only. So this includes, but is not limited to, unforeseen housing displacement or other crisis situations, such as having a housemate that is a threat to your safety. Students that are placed in emergency housing are usually placed on campus for a maximum of 30 days, and documentation status is not a factor for emergency housing. Once a student is placed in emergency housing, they are expected to create a transition plan. The man Ruiz, who I mentioned, can also help with these transition plans. A case manager can then help with creating a plan if you don't want to go to the man Ruiz, and they can appropriately suit one's circumstances. So the off-campus housing website is solely for UCSD affiliates, and this ensures optimal safety and authenticity for if you want to do like roommate searches or anything like that. And property listing allows you to list your house or apartment without a hassle. And when searching for housing, you can adjust your preferences by how much you are looking to spend, if you want a house or an apartment, and much more. The off-campus housing website provides students with the opportunity to search for roommates that attend UCSD as well. You can review rental agreements, which is a fundamental part of the housing process. And when creating an account, there are also tutorials that take you step by step on how to do so. And last but not least, there are resources for commuters, such as information on the campus shuttles, parking, affordable grocery stores, and more. I wanted to do like a walkthrough of the website, but I feel like we won't have enough time for that. So I really recommend y'all to take a look at the off-campus housing website because it's really helpful if you're ever looking for housing. But I think someone has their hand raised.
Yeah, hi. Okay, so do you know anything about what is it? Third year and 4 year housing, like upperclassmen housing, because I applied for housing next school year and I want to live on campus. And do you know the chances of, I don't know, students living on
No,
campus?
yeah, I don't know. That's like something that you would ask like HDH about.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, sorry
But
about that.
I have heard also that housing is very limited to third and fourth year students, specifically on campus. There are options like living in the village or living in the multicultural like side of campus, and there's also new dorms being built. But we are planning on having a workshop early next quarter for how on-campus housing will look like. Um, since most students tend to live off campus their third and fourth year, that's why Marissa was talking about this website, which is really useful and just narrows down all the options for off-campus housing around UCSD.
Hmm.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So pay attention now because this is really important information if you are considering moving off campus. So before moving off campus, you're going to run by a short list that'll help you narrow down your options. First, identify your budget. Be realistic about what you can and cannot afford. For example, think about paying for a $600 double versus a $1,000 single. And this is just like random amounts, but basically you get the point. A single will always be more expensive. Save money for a deposit in order to have property saved for you. Not only that, but save money for a couple months worth of rent if possible. This will help you to prevent concerns due to financial burdens. Given that looking for housing can be very stressful and time consuming, make sure to give yourself time to look at as many options as possible. When searching for housing, prioritize your needs instead of your wants. For instance, being near a bus stop is more important than a place that has a pool, but a bus stop that is 10 to 15 minutes away walking. Or what about being close to your work location? For example, you will be working remotely perhaps, then in that case you could live somewhere else where the rent may be more affordable. It's up to you. But if you're going to live with roommates, then consider who that might be. Do you have current roommates that could possibly be interested? Or what about friends from another dorm or friends from an organization you're a part of? Here are some tips to keep in mind. At the very minimum, you should leave 1 to 2 months before your lease ends to find a new place because a variety of factors need to be considered. And what that means by leave 1 to 2 months, like they mean like start looking for a new place if you happen to like know that you're gonna need somewhere else to live after your lease ends. And for instance, you need to make sure that there is no overlap between the leases and you have enough time to contact the properties to get more information if necessary. Additionally, it'd be a good idea to schedule an appointment to go check out the place and see if you like it or if it doesn't fit your preferences. There also needs to be enough time to fill out applications and time for processing. And here are some tips that I wish I would have known when searching for housing. I didn't write them down, but I can always repeat them or type them in the chat if y'all want me to. But if possible, find your roommates before looking for housing. It makes the process a lot simpler when you know what everyone wants or prefers. And if there are any red flags about the people you are trying to live with or about the unit, it's best to trust your gut and not live with those people or in that place. And definitely try to find a place that pays for most or some of the utilities, such as water, gas, sewer, and trash removal. It really saves a lot of money. It is better to start looking earlier rather than later because it gives you plenty of options and lessens the stress of having to commit to a place right away or out of not having enough time. Be sure to consider all aspects of your housing options. Is the parking situation good? Is it close to a grocery store? Is the laundry in unit or room within the building complex? The list goes on the questions that you might have. And with all this in mind, one can feel more confident with their choices when searching for housing or roommates on websites such as the Off Campus Housing website, which I just mentioned, Pad Mapper, and Facebook groups. And now, when searching for roommates, there are a couple things to consider other than who you already know. Compatibility between your roommates can either make or break your housing experience. Therefore, it's important to keep in mind factors such as cleanliness, sleeping habits, study habits, or whether they're a homebody or go out to party frequently. Perhaps you might think you could bear it if they ever like if you aren't compatible, but sometimes it can really start to like if you don't get along, it could make you not like living there. So it's pretty important to keep these things in mind before committing. Does anyone have questions so far? I don't know if somebody typed something in the chat.
No, it was me.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Well, the leasing process can be very different. Oh, I forgot to switch that over, but um, the leasing process can be very different depending on the places, but here are some of the basics. Some places can require an application fee before you are even guaranteed the unit, and this is completely legal, so don't be scared if you see this. Some places also run credit checks to see whether or not you are eligible to rent, and if you feel that your credit is too low, you can ask someone to co-sign the lease with you. Just be aware that this is a big legal liability that the person will be taking on. So that could be like your parents, for example. But like I said, it's a big legal liability. So just look into that. And there are also different leasing options that places offer, such as month-to-month leasing option, 6 months, 9 months, or even a year. So make sure to consider which one is best for you. And security deposits are required, and they are meant to do two things. Number one, it's meant to secure your unit. And number two, if any damage is done to the place, the landlord can use some or all of that security deposit to fix them. And if you get the full deposit back, that means that everything was in the same condition as when you moved in. However, if you don't, then you need to be provided with a written notice of how the deposit was used. To avoid or minimize this, um, you should take photos of everything when you first move in. So if you see like there's a dent or something on the wall and you think, well, maybe they can take my security deposit later, thinking that that was me, then you should take pictures like of all the damages when you like first move in. In this way, you can have proof of the conditions of the unit as it was given to you. And if you forget to do this, you can be charged for something that you didn't do. Before moving out, make sure to contact your leasing office or landlord 30 days in advance to let them know whether you plan to renew the lease or not. This must be done. In my own experience of living off campus, the apartment complex I live in had us do an application fee, and then they asked us to provide proof of income to see if me and my roommates made um, like 3 times the amount of rent, just to like, that's what they needed to make sure that we could afford it basically. And it was pretty stressful. We like wrote down the proof of income wrong at first because we didn't include like our financial aid. But once we included the financial aid, then we got the place. But we were like denied at first because we we didn't make enough money supposedly. But yeah, it can be rough. But I also just want to emphasize that I know it can sound scary in the moment, like all these rules and things. But I think once you're actually in the process of trying to find a place, um, it'll it'll be less scary. I think just right now it's a lot to take in. But something else I wanted to say is to make sure to read your lease and familiarize yourself with it, such as what is allowed and not allowed, the late fees for rent, and the policies on repairs, to name a few. Also, familiarize yourself with your rights as a tenant. What does the law protect you from? What are some steps to take if you happen to be neglected as a tenant? So many times people have like, not all the time, but they'll have like some bad stories with their landlord because sometimes conflict can happen between the tenant and the landlord. Also, you want to break down responsibilities with your housemates who will set up an SDG account and who will set up the Wi-Fi bill. Do not forget to establish house rules, as this makes the living situation a lot more clear when everyone knows what is expected of each other. Some things to consider are visitors okay? Are people's partners staying over okay? And these two especially are like super important right now because with COVID-19, some people like to go out more. Some people are more um, strict on the quarantine. So obviously those are things to consider if you want to like live with friends, for example, and you might know like, oh, they like to go out more, but I'm like more cautious. So just keep that in mind. And how does COVID-19 affect off-campus housing for students? For students looking for housing, try to find apartments that offer virtual tours, connect with the off-campus housing office to schedule a housing consultation, and review your housing options with them and release. Also, you'll want to use online platforms to search for rooms and roommates. And then as for students looking to get out of their lease, the pandemic is not likely to be a cause to end this lease, but there are some exceptions if a tenant has been infected by COVID-19. If the tenant is at risk and there's a higher possibility of infection where tenant is currently residing, then you will most likely be able to get out the lease. But other than that, it's kind of more difficult to. And if y'all have any specific concerns with anything that I've discussed, I recommend to schedule a 30-minute one-on-one with our basic needs staff. Just go to basicneeds.ucsd.edu and click on the assistance forms tab. There's like 4 different kinds. There's like the basic needs one, you can see CalFresh, personal hygiene pickup, and the Trident food pantry order. And here is our website, email, and phone number. As always, feel free to contact us through these platforms if y'all have any questions or concerns. But I want to open up the rest of the time for the students or the mentors to share their housing experience, my bad, and for questions that any of y'all might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Marisa. And yes, if anyone has any questions about the Hub Basic Needs or about housing off campus, please feel free to ask now. I do want to give Alyssa and Bizrat some time to talk about their housing experience. They're both mentors right now. They're both third years, correct? Yes, third years. And if y'all just want to talk about how that experience has been for you, I know it's different and it's a new thing for most students, especially if they're planning to live off campus. So just talk about like where you were living your first year, maybe your second, and now your third, and how has that been for you? And whoever wants to go first, more than welcome to take the platform.
I can go. So hi everyone, my name is Bizrat. I'm a third year here at UCSD. I'm a 2XL mentor, like Steph mentioned, and my housing experience here at UCSD has been the same. Luckily, I've been living on campus all the 3 years, and I've been liking it. And I think it's more convenient to live on campus than off campus. But I know like a lot of friends that do live off campus, and they have used the off-campus housing website to do their research. Earlier on during their sophomore year, That way they have an idea of what type of people they want to live it with, and the proximity of the apartments they are looking for. So I do recommend doing your research early on and having an idea of what type of environment you want to live in, also like how close you want to live to campus. And something else that I do recommend is, if you're interested, you can apply to be an RA. So that gives you like a guaranteed housing off, on campus. So yes, like that comes with a lot of responsibility, but if you see yourself being an RA and helping out on campus, you can apply for that. Yeah.
Since you are a third year and housing is a bit more restrictive for third and fourth years, how was it applying for you when you were a second year? And where are you living now
Yeah, that's a good
on
question.
campus?
I'm living in ERC. I'm from ERC, so I do prefer to live in the college, and I received a scholarship that covers for my 4-year housing. So that's how like I get to live on campus, which is why I say like luckily I get to live on campus. But I know a lot of students have to move out, so if you really have to move out, do your research early on, and have an idea. That way you don't panic. And also, like Marissa, like she explained everything and what you need to do throughout the process. And if you need resources and support, the hub is there for you. So don't be scared to reach out. But if you really want to live on campus, then you can apply to the NRA. So those are my 2 recommendations. Yeah.
Thank you, Bizrat. Alyssa, I know your situation is a bit different and you're living off campus, right? So do you mind sharing?
Yeah, so yes, I'm living off campus. And I mean, I do kind of like living off campus as opposed to on campus. There's a little bit more like freedom, I feel like with where you can eat and stuff. So I mean, there's some pros. But yeah, with COVID, it was a lot more difficult because my roommates and I were all like we're at home, so we never were able to see each other. So we were doing all of this research on our own separately, and like we would try to reconvene and stuff at certain times and talk about what we were looking for, but it was just a lot more difficult. And then like when we were actually doing the lease and stuff, we were doing all of that apart, whereas normally we would have been together, like side by side doing it, which would have been I think a lot easier to figure out like what we wanted and all that sort of thing. But we figured it out. Basically, talk to people who are older, maybe your mentor, to find out, the different apartments that are out there. Do your research. There's a lot of really good options. There's so many different apartments to choose from. You can look up the pricing of like the different layouts, compare them, put them on a spreadsheet. I also use like the Google Maps app to see like how close it was to grocery stores, to school, where it was on the bus map, that sort of thing. That's really important. I would recommend like not having one where like you have to take 2 bus rides, like you have to like get off at a place and then get on another one. Like from afar, if you've never done it, it seems okay, but I think in practice, when you're actually trying to get to class every single day, I think that could really cause some issues, and you don't want to like be late and then getting an Uber and like racking up those charges. So yeah, definitely pay attention to location and stuff. And yeah, one thing that I found that I was surprised about was, we were all like kind of anxious to get it in because we didn't want it to fill up. We wanted to get what we wanted. But what we found was that a lot of them were like, they didn't have like guaranteed openings until the month before you were to move in. So like definitely do your research and figure out what you want, because there was a lot of different options to consider. But yeah, just keep in mind, like a lot of them, you don't actually like sign up for the lease until like a month before you move in. So that was something, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, it was a little bit difficult finally applying to things. I ended up doing it mostly by myself. Just get comfortable like calling, like talking to people on the phone. If you have a question, like call them and they'll help you through it, because they're your customer, like they want you to live there, so they'll help you. But yeah, that's kind of my advice, my 2 cents on it. I'm really happy where I ended up living. There's a lot of different considerations for everybody, but yeah.
And did you ever live on campus, Alyssa?
Yeah, I did. My first year, I'm from Marshall, so I lived in like the Marshall dorms, the regular dorms. And then my second year, I applied to live in International House. So I lived in I House my second year, which was pretty fun. And yeah, now I'm living off campus with some friends. And it's pretty cool. It's nice in quarantine to like be living with friends. So yeah.
And what have you noticed are some of the differences between living on and off campus? I know you mentioned food is one of the good ones. I guess you get to leave campus. What other things have you noticed?
Yeah, it's nice that we don't need like dining dollars anymore. You have a lot more freedom in that way. Also, it's just nice. You have more freedom of like, just how to like decorate your place, that sort of thing, instead of like the dorm things. And also, I know that it's just really strict on campus, like everything, which of course, like it should be, like it has to be. And like, like my apartment is very COVID safe, but like I don't know. I'm still like close enough to campus that, it's not really too difficult for me to go get a test, especially from the vending machines. Those are really nice. Um, so yeah, I guess the main difference is that like I have to take the bus, except the bus is like, like my bus ride is really, really short. Um, Other than that, yeah, like I don't have like an RA but I mean like if we have noise complaints, which we haven't personally, but if we did, like I'd be taken up with like our neighbors and we'd probably have like a 3-strike system, something like that. Um, that's pretty much it. I would say it's pretty chill. Um, yeah, I like it.
Thank you for sharing, though. And if anyone has any questions for Alyssa and or Bizrat, please feel free to ask now or dropping them on the chat. Marissa, I'm not sure if you would like to share your housing experience if we have some time.
Yeah, of course. So I lived off campus my first year. I was commuting from Chula Vista, which is like 30 minutes away from campus. And I honestly didn't like it. Like I hated waking up early. I had mirror writing my first year, like 40 and 50, which like are always early. And so that sucked like so badly because also like essays, sometimes I'd be writing them like in the car. I wasn't driving, I carpooled, and yeah, it was cool to like, have someone to drive with, but it's like it's driving. Like I didn't want to do that every morning. And so if you're a commuter, like props to you because it's rough. And then so my second year, I lived on campus at the village, and that was pretty fun. It got cut short because of COVID. So I only lived there like 2 quarters, and then the third, they were like that was when everybody was like kicked out basically, and so I left. But that was super fun. I really loved like being there at school and just like being able to skate like wherever I wanted, like to class or to friends or whatever. The food wasn't that bad, I feel like, because I mean, I was also next to the bistro, so like I got sushi like all the time, which is bomb. And yeah, I was happy. Like also the glider port was right there, so like I honestly like I miss the village so badly. Here. And so then my third year, which is now, I'm living off campus next to like UTC. So it's like still by the school. And I really like it too. It's definitely comfortable, at least where like the apartment I chose. And I'm living with friends. Sometimes with like COVID-19, like that stuff can get a bit like scary because sometimes I'll be like, oh, I thought I was exposed, but then they're fine. And like, stuff like that. Whereas it's living with my family, like they literally like don't leave the house like ever. So it's kind of rough. Like when I went back for Christmas, I was like, damn, should I stay longer? Like I'm kind of like worrying back at my apartment, because my roommates will sometimes, I don't know, go out or whatever. So that was kind of like a conflict that I had for a bit. But I'm happy with my decisions. Like overall, I'm really happy to have like all the experience of like commuting to living on campus to living off campus. And I think overall, from my experience, I would say like I like living on campus better. Um, but it is like a good getaway if you do live off campus, whereas like when you're at UCSC like 24/7, it can feel kind of like you're like stuck there. So I know from my sister that lived on campus as well when she was a UCSC student, she really liked living like at Sixth, where it's like further, so she still felt like she was like in her own like kind of world, and UCSD was like aside, but she was still close in a way. So it's really just up to personal preference. I do think like the initial applying process to apartments is really stressful, especially if like you're getting denied to multiple. But I was lucky because with my roommates, we all live like close to each other, so we were able to like see the apartment together. And this was like the first one we saw, and the first one like we were sold on and like got accepted after like the second time applying because of that whole like proof of income error thing, which was annoying. But I really like living off campus, on campus too. But I did not like commuting. That's the moral of the story. Yeah. You're muted, Stephanie. Sorry.
Sorry. Thank you, Marisa. And thank you, Alyssa and Bizrat, for sharing. As you can see, there's different experiences. Some people like living off campus, some people like living on. Regardless of what the situation is, there's a process for applying into anything. And yes, you are all second years, and there might be a slight change for your third year housing, but I do recommend you start thinking about it sooner rather than later. How Marisa had mentioned, like apartments do get filled up. Again, with COVID and everything going on right now, things might look a little bit different, but it's better safe to get some information now and just start browsing the website, start talking to older classmates, start talking to your mentors about their process and how it's been for them. I think that's super beneficial. But does anyone have any questions, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself or drop it on the chat. Now's the time to ask, whether it be related to applications, some of the things that they like, or anything in particular that you have. You're more than welcome to ask now. So, anyone? Oh, there's a question. For when you were commuting, this is from Angel, I'm hoping. For when you were commuting, what parking lot did you utilize? Because I don't know when we will open up to in-person classes again, but I will have to commute. So I guess this is for Marissa.
Yeah, so I wasn't ever the one driving because I don't have even have my license, but when I was like commuting with my friend, he would always park at Gliderport. I don't know if that's still like allowed, but I know there was like one time cars got towed and I don't know why. It was like late at night and I thought that was really messed up because like parking situation is so bad. Yeah, everyone knows that. So Gliderport's like an easy option and I hope it's still like allowed like for parking, public parking, but that's like super easy if you don't know where, because otherwise you do need like a permit, which is expensive. So yeah.
And to add on to that, I did commute for a year since I took 4 years and a quarter to graduate. So I commuted that last quarter. And I also would park at Gliderport or anywhere behind, like, is it ERC, Mirror, or Marshall? Like that whole backside of streets and houses, wherever that was at. I would park there. It is recommended to arrive earlier, maybe before like 7:30, because once 7:30 hits, it's like it just starts to get packed. I also had a student permit, a parking permit at one point, but parking was still a hassle. Like if you don't arrive early, even for workers, if you don't arrive early, you won't get for sure parking spots. So arriving early and maybe, or if you have late classes, arriving after like 4:30, that could also work.
Mm.
I believe so. Yes. So the question is, so basically we can live on campus for our third year, but it's going to be a part of special housings. You can live on campus, but most likely, at least what I've heard, yeah, you would have to live like in iHouse or in the village, or I mean, Bizrat, you said that for you it was a bit different because of your scholarship, right? But it's essentially the same, just having to apply. Oh, I think. Yeah. So yeah, I would hold on and wait until we have that on-campus housing workshop, which is going to be happening early next quarter. And hopefully we'll give you more information about that. But I do recommend you refer and reach out to HDH. Someone that I can definitely recommend is Pachia, Pachia. She's always giving information and presentations for our students, and she's really, really nice. So she's really helpful. Pachia, she works at HDH. Any other questions? Alrighty. Well, one last thing that I will ask all of you to fill out. I just dropped on the chat a link. We would greatly appreciate any advice or recommendations that you have. But unless that's it, I really want to thank Marisa. I want to thank Bisra and Alyssa for being here, for taking your time to share your experiences, and for just being open about how your experiences were. So I really, really appreciate it. And please, everyone, fill the link on the chat. We would appreciate the feedback for upcoming workshops, and look out for that on-campus housing workshop next quarter. That's going to be super beneficial too. And utilize the hub resources. They're super useful and important. I think Marisa can attest to that.
Yes. Thank you.
But thank you all. Have a good day. Thank you for joining. And make sure to RSVP if you haven't already, because we use that to check like who joined and who came to our presentations and stuff. But thank you so much. Bizrat and Alyssa, make sure to fill out, take account for your time. Okay.
Thank you.
Alrighty, y'all.
Bye.
Thank you.